Something unusual is happening to World Cup 2026. Not on the pitch, not inside the stadiums, and not in the way most people expected. Because the biggest World Cup in history is approaching faster than ever. The excitement should be building. The anticipation should be growing. The conversation should be dominated by players, teams, and predictions. Instead, a different conversation is beginning to take over. A conversation about costs, about travel, about accessibility, and about whether football's biggest tournament is slowly becoming harder for ordinary supporters to experience. At first, these concerns seemed insignificant.
Just a few complaints.
A few discussions online. A few frustrated supporters sharing their opinions. Nothing unusual. Every World Cup faces criticism before it begins. But over time, something changed. The concerns didn't disappear. They multiplied. The same issues kept appearing across different countries, different fan communities, and different football discussions. And that is why some people are starting to believe that something much bigger is happening. Before we continue, subscribe if you want more deep-dive football documentaries as we follow every major story surrounding World Cup 2026. Because today's story may end up defining the entire tournament. On paper, World Cup 2026 should be football's greatest success story. 48 teams, 3 host nations, 16 host cities. More matches than ever before. More countries represented than ever before. Everything about the tournament is designed to be bigger. And for FIFA, bigger has always meant progress. More nations involved. More supporters engaged. More opportunities created. The logic seems impossible to argue with. After all, who wouldn't want a more global World Cup? But as the tournament has expanded, so have the challenges surrounding it. And those challenges are beginning to affect the way supporters view the event. The biggest issue is surprisingly simple: distance. World Cup 2026 will stretch across the United States, Canada, and Mexico. The scale is unprecedented. Some host cities are separated by thousands of miles. For television audiences, that changes almost nothing. For supporters hoping to attend in person, it changes everything. Following a national team throughout the competition may require multiple flights,
Extensive travel planning.
several hotel stays, and a budget that many supporters simply cannot afford. That reality is forcing many fans to reconsider what attending the World Cup actually means. For decades, supporters viewed the tournament as something difficult but achievable. A dream worth pursuing. Something that required sacrifice but remained within reach. For some fans, World Cup 2026 feels different. The dream still exists, but the path toward it feels increasingly complicated. And that is where the conversation begins changing. Because football's greatest strength has always been accessibility. The game belongs to everyone. That idea helped transform football into the world's most popular sport. The World Cup became the ultimate celebration of that identity. A place where supporters from every culture, every background, and every corner of the world could come together. But accessibility becomes harder to maintain as complexity increases. And complexity is exactly what World Cup 2026 is creating. More teams create more matches. More matches create more venues. More venues create more travel. More travel creates more costs. Each step sounds reasonable on its own. Together, they create a challenge that many supporters are beginning to notice. And if you're finding this analysis valuable so far, consider leaving a like. It genuinely helps the channel continue producing these long-form football documentaries. What makes this situation particularly interesting is that fan interest in football remains incredibly strong. People still care. People still watch. People still dream about the World Cup. The issue is not passion. The issue is participation. A supporter can love football more than ever before. That doesn't make flights cheaper. That doesn't make hotels cheaper. That doesn't make a continent-wide tournament easier to navigate. And that gap between passion and participation may be one of the most important stories surrounding World Cup 2026. Because perception matters. If supporters begin feeling excluded from the experience, excitement starts changing, not disappearing.
Changing.
The emotional connection becomes weaker. The anticipation becomes more complicated. The dream becomes less realistic. And once that happens, football faces a problem that cannot be solved simply by adding more matches or attracting more viewers. It becomes a question of identity. Who is the World Cup really for? Is it becoming more inclusive because more nations can qualify? Or is it becoming less accessible because attending has become increasingly difficult? That debate is growing louder as the tournament approaches. And FIFA may soon find itself facing a challenge it never expected. Not a lack of interest, not a lack of demand. A growing concern among supporters that football's biggest event is drifting away from the people who made it special. That is what nobody seems fully prepared for. The possibility that the biggest World Cup ever created could also become one of the most difficult for ordinary supporters to experience. The irony is impossible to ignore. The tournament is expanding to include more people than ever before. Yet many fans worry they may feel further away from it than ever before. That contradiction sits at the heart of everything happening right now. And it may ultimately become one of the defining stories of World Cup 2026. Not because it guarantees failure. The tournament will almost certainly attract enormous audiences. It will generate unforgettable moments. It will dominate headlines around the world. The football itself will still be extraordinary. But the stories surrounding the tournament may be very different. Because the biggest challenge facing World Cup 2026 may not be football at all. It may be preserving the connection between the event and the supporters who give it meaning. And now I'd genuinely like to hear your opinion. Do you think supporters are right to be concerned about the direction of World Cup 2026? Or do you believe the tournament's expansion will ultimately be worth the trade-offs? Let me know in the comments below. Because by the time the opening match begins, one thing may already be clear. Nobody is ready for what's happening to World Cup 2026. Not because the tournament is getting smaller, but because the biggest World Cup in history may also be revealing some of football's biggest challenges.